The story started, like all good stories, with a teaser trailer.
Whoa, that's very meta already. Carry on.
I know. On Friday the 21st of August, 1835, the New York Sun, which was either an obscure New York newspaper or the biggest newspaper in the world. I'll tell you more about that later. It's one of the two. It's kind of hard to tell. Published a short note on page 2. Now, I'm going to do a whole chunk of excerpts from that newspaper in that week.
Don't worry, this stool is very comfy. I'm ready.
No, I just got to prepare you for the language that they used back then. I'm not going to do it in newspaper voice because there's just too much of it. Yeah. But this is just the excerpt. We've just learned from an eminent publisher in Edinburgh that Sir John Herschel, at the Cape of Good Hope, has made some astronomical discoveries of the most wonderful description by means of an immense telescope of an entirely new principle.
Actually astronomical, not as in euphemism for big.
No, yes.
Actual astro stuff.
Well, I guess they could have gone with some astronomical discoveries.
Whoa.
But yes, they are discoveries about stuff in space that were big, because of his immense telescope. Now, by all reports, no one really noticed this teaser trailer. But the following week, the Sun followed through. 6 days worth of blistering front page astronomical news.
Oh, good God.
Extracted directly from the Edinburgh Journal of Science. It was long. It was rambling. I think it came to 17,000 words, taking up the front page of the newspaper every single day. Extracted directly from the Edinburgh Journal of Science.
Why don't newspapers do that anymore?
But all of New York went absolutely frickin' bonkers for it. And it started with a description of a telescope. Welcome to the Wholesome Show, science stories for people who sit up the back of the bus, back of the class.
Where we ask astronomically pointless questions, so you, very dear listener, do not have to.
The
youth of today.
The Wholesome Show
that's it.
Is me, Will Grant, and...
me, Dr. Roderick Griffin, astronomically thinged Lamberts. That's all I got.
And is brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science.
And telescopes.
It would be nice.
I'm still reeling from the idea that a newspaper included more than none of a journal article.
No, directly. Well, I'll tell you the whole story, of course.
Just that. I'm just wallowing around or wading around in that idea. I mean, you want to bring Murdoch down? You really want to bring him down? Start publishing science papers on the front of his papers.
Front page. Take up 3/4 of the front page. And it was in an era when there was no pictures or anything like that. It was jamming the front page full of.
And the newsies could read the abstracts. Extra, 513 glutamase.
Okay. So that was Friday. It's coming next week, they said. Day 1 was Tuesday. I don't know why they didn't start on Monday, but day 1 was Tuesday the 25th of August, 1835.
Yeah.
As it said it would, it was giving itself over to the Edinburgh Journal of Science. I'm going to read chunks of this.
Chunk it.
We this morning commenced the publication of a series of extracts from the new supplement to the Edinburgh Journal of Science, which have been very politely furnished us by a medical gentleman immediately from Scotland.
The extra words.
I know. Like some medical guy.
Ocelot, hovercraft, boom, boom, boom. You just don't need those words in there.
In consequence of a paragraph which appeared in Friday on the last Edinburgh Courant. Anyway, the portion which we published today is introductory to celestial discoveries of higher and more universal interest than any in any science yet known to the human race.
So not promising anything.
Okay, as I said before, it went on for a long time in this super flowery
without actually giving you any detail.
Yeah,
it's 11 pages of fanfare.
Paragraph after paragraph of 1830s language where you're like, what do you got? There's one example here.
Give me anything to hang on to.
From the hour the first human pair opened their eyes to the glories of the blue firmament above them, there has been no accession to human knowledge at all comparable in sublime interest to that which he has been the honoured agent in supplying. That's just saying he found some good stuff and it's the biggest we've ever found.
And the first human pair, I assume, is Adam and Eve?
Yeah, that's what he meant. The first human pair. It didn't mean a pair.
The first human pair. Oh my God, it's genetic experiments. Kill me.
Yeah, Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. But I think they were used to people being aware of Adam and Eve in the time. The essence of the story that day was that Sir John Herschel, a real person, from a famous astronomical family in England.
The Herschels.
The Herschels.
I've heard of them.
Herschel Senior, William Herschel, had discovered the
Zumba Rakuda Buddha.
Yeah, that one.
And they went on, one of them who was only half a Herschel became a Hershey, and they made a chocolate factory.
Nice.
Hershish they were originally.
Yeah, he did something else. But John Herschel, was had done a lot of telescope work, and he'd done a lot of astronomy. The story they were saying today is he had made a stonking great telescope, like literally huge.
Yep.
Now, they didn't use the word stonking. Stonking is what I've put in there. But
they would use different and many, many more.
Lots of words. Yeah, they did. I'm editing this down a long way. So it had a lens 24 feet in diameter.
Oh, that is, stonking is the term.
And stonking. 7 tons of glass after being published has a magnifying power of 42,000 times. Now, I'm not going to tell you, it went in for a long way of how he made it.
Wow.
And it was too big for any way of doing it. So what he did, he got 2 types of glass and he melted them together. And it's just ridiculous that just a bit of a previously or other refracting lenses have been maybe as big as a meter. And so this is 24 feet, so 8 meters. So
I kind of want to hear. I know you're not going to read it, but I kind of want to hear about that because that is no mean feat. And then to polish it and smooth it and make it actually work. I mean, we can build a big lump of glass, sure.
And also, as we're going to find out, get it to South Africa. I would say make it in South Africa. I don't know.
That's all. You're going to need a boat.
You're going to but
go to the boat
getting
and some cushions.
7 tons of glassware around.
It's a lot of cushions.
Now, the paper said this is an awesome achievement, but there was a bit of a problem because at 24 feet in diameter, it was going to be a few feet in width. So the problem with that is that will be actually so thick that it'll refract the light that you want, but it'll make everything really dim. And there's a great little passage from the article here, how Sir John solved this problem.
Make it thinner.
No. The conversation became directed to that all-invincible enemy, the paucity of light in powerful magnifiers. After a few moments' silent thought, Sir John diffidently inquired whether it not be possible to effect a transfusion of artificial light through the focal object of vision. Sir David, I don't know who he is, he's in here somewhere, it doesn't matter, somewhat startled at the originality of the idea, paused a while, and then hesitatingly referred to the refrangibility of rays and the angle of incidence. Sir John, grown more confident, adduced the example of the Newtonian reflector, in which the refrangibility, this is a newspaper, by the way.
I'm still reeling.
This is a popular newspaper. It wasn't,
or not. We haven't ascertained.
But it definitely went for, it was going for mainstream. It was not going for...
How many, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I can't help myself. How many drafts
did they get to me?
How naturally are they schooled or trained or habituated to write that way?
I don't know. It baffles me. It baffles me so much.
It would take me 20 drafts to write that.
That you would use the word the frangibility twice, which I...
That's a record already.
When I was a kid, frangers was a name for condoms. Is that a word down here?
Still is.
Yeah, there you go. Refrangibility. So I read that and I thought, yeah, there you go. In which the refrangibility was corrected by the second speculum and the angle of incidence restored by the third. Who in the New York reading public in 1835 is continuing after that sentence?
No, you're like, give me the sports pages. I can't. I just can't.
And, continued he, why cannot the illuminated microscope, say the hydro-oxygen, be applied to render distinct, and if necessary, even to magnify the focal object? Sir David sprang from his chair in the ecstasy of conviction, and leaping halfway to the ceiling, exclaimed, "Thou art the man!"
No.
Okay.
Thou art the man.
Thou art the man.
No.
That was in there.
That's total, that's a fucking Coen Brothers. Thou art the man. Oh, Bill and Ted.
You're the man, like they said in 1830s.
Thou art the man. So you the man existed for centuries.
Thou art the man.
You man. That's excellent. And to clarify, this was lifted from a science Journal.
Science journal.
This is word for word.
That bit was word for
So
word.
Thou Art the Man was also in the Science Journal. And the dude, what is it? Orgiastically and ecstatically leaping with his
halfway to the
happy
ceiling.
boner with the excitement. This is wonderful.
So there you go.
I'm coming round.
Next journal article you go for. Thou art
the man.
There you go. When I solved this method, my colleagues said to me, "Thou art the man."
Wow.
Okay, just to clarify what he had done, he'd worked out you put a microscope in front of the telescope, and then that will make the light bright enough.
Wouldn't it make the microscope look huge?
So
You look at that and go, "Holy shit, that's another telescope!" No, it's a microscope, mate.
So you
put a microscope in front of the telescope and you use some sort of artificial light.
So what that's going to do is it's going to the microscope's bringing the artificial light. It's going to you can make stuff, you can see stuff really well from a long way away, like any telescope, but also the microscope is making it bright enough to actually see. That's his innovation.
That's actually pretty clever. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Maybe I think just a little. It might be bunkum.
Or it's just basically a telescope has more than one lens. It's another lens.
It is another lens. But anyway.
Okay, I'm less impressed now. Thou art the man, no longer.
Okay, that was day one. Day one of this.
What a day!
Of this stupendous, immense series was just describing the telescope, and I don't know how hooked New York was at the time. I will tell you. I'll jump ahead. The word ecstasy does come in again later at how
I'm feeling it too.
Hooked New York is by this story.
Yeah.
But day one was describing the telescope, and they said it was just so stonking.
Oh, and I'm getting it. By issue 2, I'm thinking I'm going to be ecstatic as well.
Yeah,
pretty confident.
Okay, day 2.
Yeah.
Basically, Herschel decided to start pointing his giant new telescope at the moon. Now.
Okay.
From day 2, they started to describe. Well, first thing he had to do is they spent a long time burying the lead, and
no,
I know.
Shocked, I tell you, shocked.
Somewhere in about the 40th paragraph, we're going to get some really juicy stuff.
Do they know what a lead is?
A
back
lead?
then, isn't a lead basically you write half the book on the cover? Or make it the headline for them?
Well, they were at least thinking about that.
Were they?
All right, they're burying the juicy bit a long way down. So they assumed people had nothing else to do.
Some would call it the story. Carry on.
So they started the second extract, day 2.
Yeah.
A correspondence had for some time passed between the boards of England, France and Austria with a view to improvements in the tables of longitude in the southern hemisphere, which are found to be less accurate than those of the northern. Blah, 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 blah. This is why Herschel, telescope guy, had to take the telescope down to the Cape of Good Hope.
Ah.
There was a reason. So he put his giant
also
telescope
because it's
on a
fucking
boat.
tricky to do.
Yes.
I'm thinking, what's a really hard place to take this giant lump of glass that's fragile and can only be made once? I know. We'll take it round the Cape of Good Hope.
Or Antarctica.
As all sailors say, that's the smoothest one. You cut your teeth. Learn how to sail around the Cape of Good Hope. That's the easiest one. Always was.
So he got there, set up a telescope, pointed at the moon.
Yeah.
What appeared before his eyes was a beautifully distinct and even vivid representation of basaltic rock.
Uh-huh.
Their articulations similar to those of the basaltic formation at Staffa. I don't know, something like Earth.
Yeah, Staffa.
Shifting the view a little bit, Herschel then perceived that the rock was profusely covered with a dark red flower. He saw flowers.
Was it now?
Yeah.
So, okay. I think the microscope isn't working right.
Well, let's wait. So he...
Dark red flower.
A dark red flower. Now, as I'll come to a little bit later, there had been a lot of people talking about, in the couple of years before, seeing different colours on the moon and speculating about what those colours might mean.
Sure. Flowers, definitely.
Flowers.
I understand
Anyway,
back then.
Herschel wiggled his telescope a little bit. The basaltic rocks...
This episode is so full of telescope euphemisms, it's killing me.
What does telescope a euphemism for? It's a 24-foot telescope. It can't be a euphemism for anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's...
I mean, he pointed his ginormous telescope at something, then he wiggled his telescope. Keep going. I'm loving it.
The basaltic rocks continued to pass over the inclined canvas plane through 3 successive diameters. He's just moving the telescope.
Yeah. Canvas plane.
I don't know what that means.
Something technical.
Bit that you're looking at, like the bit that I'm...
I don't know. I'm not. My telescopy vocabulary is sadly lacking.
You have to read the words that you can get in here, because there's other. Like next sentence is when a verdant declivity of great beauty appeared.
Something green,
which occupied 2
something
more.
green.
Yeah, declivity.
Something Either ascending or descendingly greenish, maybe.
This was preceded by another mass of nearly the former height, at the base of which we're at length delighted to perceive the novelty, a lunar forest. The trees, for a period of 10 minutes, were of one unvaried kind, and unlike any I have seen, except for some yews in English churchyards, which they looked a lot like. So they were not like any I'd seen, except for the ones that I have seen that looked like.
Okay, drugs, blind, or lying.
So we've seen flowers, and now we've got trees.
Yeah, animals are next, right? On Thursday...
These were followed by a level green plain, which is measured by the painted circle on our canvas of 49 feet.
Maybe the canvas is the thing the image reflects onto.
Yeah, okay, maybe.
That's my guess.
That's good. Astronomers correct us or don't.
I'm not hearing any. We must be right.
Blah, 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 blah. I saw different types of trees. So now there's some things that look like fir trees, as I have ever seen cherished in the bosom of my native mountains.
Stuff from my childhood. Where I'm from.
You didn't go with cherished in the bosom of my native mountains?
I do cherish bosoms in my language as often as possible.
Okay. All right. In the shade of the woods on the southeastern side, we beheld continuous herds of brown quadrupeds.
There they are. There had to be animals. Why not?
Having all the external characteristics of the bison, but more diminutive than any species of the Bos genus in our natural history. Its tail is like that of the Bos grunions.
Oh, yeah.
That's like a little bison.
Yep.
But in its semicircular horns, the hump on its shoulders, the depth of its dewlap, and the length of its shaggy hair, it closely resembled the species to which I first compared it.
Okay, this is a very good telescope.
Well, wait.
The colour of its eyes.
Remember, this is on the moon. Yeah, so it had, however, one widely distinctive feature, which we afterwards found common to nearly every lunar quadruped we've discovered.
It was a hallucination.
A remarkable fleshy appendage over the eyes, so it had really big eyebrows, crossing the whole breadth of the forehead and united to the ears. We could most distinctly perceive this hairy veil, which was shaped like the front outline of a cap known to the ladies as the Queen Mary of Scots cap. I don't know.
Oh, good God.
Lifted and lowered by means of the ears. It immediately occurred to the acute mind of Dr. Herschel that this was the providential contrivance to protect the eyes of the animal from the extreme light and darkness on the moon. So they've got an eyebrow. Do you remember? He's looking from
Sunglass flaps.
South Africa. He's got his telescope looking at the moon, and he's seeing things that look like buffalo or bison.
And he's seeing their eye flaps.
He's seeing their eye flaps.
Drunk, broken, lying. Or all three.
Which could it be?
And to be fair, with drunk, I could mean any array of neurotoxins or psychopharmacologicals.
Yes.
I'm still loving it.
Another animal. The next animal perceived would be classed on Earth as a monster. It was of bluish lead colour, about the size of a goat, with a head and beard like him, i.e. a goat,
the goat,
and a single horn, slightly inclined forward from the perpendicular.
So a unigoat.
Unicorn goat.
Unicoat.
The female was destitute of horn and beard. I'm not sure. Is he seeing to the...
He can see the junk.
He can see the junk from
space
on
goat
the moon.
Junk.
But had a much longer tail. It was gregarious and chiefly abounded by the acclivitus glades of the woods.
Acclivitus?
So he's found animals. So he's got flowers, trees, animals so far. What do you think is coming on day 3?
I'm going to go with sentient life forms and structures.
Damn.
I've read science.
Here we go. Day 3, Thursday.
Actually, no, structures, then sentient life.
And I've got to say, look, probably at this point, New York is starting to go absolutely wild for this. I'll come to this.
Wouldn't you, though? If this was your source of information, actually, like if I was seeing this and reading this, if I'd gotten through issue 1, I'd be like weeing myself. If you had
managed to read those paragraphs and work out what it's actually saying.
There's creatures on the moon. Jesus Christ, that's amazing. And why would I not believe Herschel? Okay. He never does hallucinogens.
No, not at all. He did. So he started, again, boringly. He described some geological formations, oval-shaped mountains and extinct volcanoes, which actually, that's we can see them.
Again, what we know is that means it hasn't kicked in yet.
But he got to. He started numbering things. So he's basically chief botanist of the moon at this point. He's described 38
No, fuck it. I am.
38 species of trees, twice this number of plants. So what are we talking? We're talking 74 species, 76
or
species
76,
of plants.
Yeah. You choose.
9 species of mammalia and 5 of oviparia.
I love he knows that they're mammals.
They must be.
I think that's fabulous. And what's oviparia? Is that something with eggs?
Maybe birds. Birds. Is it?
Birds.
Correct us later, listener.
Yeah, correct us now. Not too late.
Well, he does know they're mammals because at some point he
smell their warm blood.
does describe the sucking on the boob.
Keep going.
But the highlight of day 3 was the discovery of the first sign of intelligent, though primitive, lunar life.
Right.
The biped beaver.
You're killing me.
I know, right?
I pointed my giant telescope at the biped beaver and made observations.
These were
No,
extraordinary.
you go ahead and take a drink if you want. I think you need it. You've earned it. Have a sip.
You want more
It's
beavers?
good for you. It's good for you. The biped beaver.
Okay.
I might need to lie down.
Space beaver. So these extraordinary space beavers walked on 2 feet and bore their young in their arms. They lived in huts constructed better and higher than those of many tribes of human savages.
Oh, yes, because they're on the moon.
Just a slight disclaimer, listener. There's some of the language in this that is not...
Old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned, yes. And
Old-fashioned.
so, yeah.
By savages, he means something that we don't mean.
Signs of smoke
Smoke.
above the huts of the beavers indicated that these advanced animals had even mastered the use of fire.
I fucking love it's beavers. what a bipedal beaver? Well done. I'd jump ecstatically from my chair and say, "Thou art the man."
It's walking on 2 legs, so...
Why beaver? I mean, that's fantastic. That alone.
Maybe he spotted giant teeth or a big tail.
Big flappy tail.
I don't know.
Look at that shit. That's a beaver for sure, but sentient. Oh, that's wonderful. More about the beavers or their dwellings.
Okay, so we've got day 4. Where do you reckon we're going next? So, day 4...
We haven't had any oceans or anything yet, have we?
I think he actually did. There was some boring bits where he was describing beaches and some other stuff. There's
He made beaches boring?
there was a beautiful white sandy beach at one point.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I know. I want to go to. I'd like to
love
go.
it.
It did
It's so
sound
nice.
nice. I want to go.
I'll lie down, get comfy. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, but it may surprise you that I didn't read all 17,000 words of this. I read chunks. And
You used to be devoted to Sparkle Motion, but I don't think you are anymore.
I got to say, 17,000 words is a lot of words.
It's like when you don't want to read them.
When they're hard words like that, when "thou art the man" is the best bit of it, like the rest is not "thou art the
Vista
man."
topstitudinously.
All right, so they discovered better than beavers, but some human-like creatures.
Oh, much better than beavers.
Human-like creatures living inside a ring of red hills they dubbed the Ruby Colosseum. That's anyway.
Or red hills.
Yeah. Unlike earthbound humans, these creatures were covered, except on the face, with short and glossy copper-coloured hair.
Delightful.
Had wings composed of a thin membrane.
Of course they did.
They're bat people. Without hair, lying snugly upon their backs. The faces of these creatures were of a yellowish flesh colour, was a slight improvement upon that of the large orangutan.
Improvement.
So they gave them a Latin name. They called them the Vespertillo homo, or man-bat.
The bullshiatus I'm on drugsus.
The astronomers watched them engage in what appeared to be animated conversations, and hence inferred that they were rational conversations.
As if you wouldn't.
You're watching these people talk from
That one's waving its arms and the other one stopped, and then they swapped.
It's a rational conversation.
Of course it is, because no one was punching them, and there was no. What did they observe?
Also,
Did
apparently,
they observe coitus?
holy shit, they did.
Of course they did.
No, they did.
And you know what they want? They went back and observed it again. Oh, hang on, and again.
Some of their amusements would but ill comport with our terrestrial notions of decorum.
Dirty fuckers root in front of each other.
They're fucking out in public.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're fucking on the moon while we're watching.
I'm a bat person. You're a bat person. Why don't we get down?
I
Yeah.
just blows my mind that
Then they high five and say, "Thou art the man." Did they note whether the bat people and the beaver folk
they're all nice,
Bat
but I don't think they interspecies
They didn't
do.
interspecies
No, they're all
do.
nice. He didn't spot any warring going on.
No, in war. I don't know
the-
if they quite the reverse of war. Did they love each other?
Did they love each other? I believe that they kept it within the family, so to
that's
speak.
good. That's good. I think that's good because you don't want a bat with a beaver tail and one wing. I don't think that would go well.
On the moon? No,
Not on the moon.
Not
No,
at all.
here it'd be fine.
So no, I think that the bat humans, the bat people,
The savages.
yes, they well as
So beaver savages as opposed to bat lords.
well. See, this is the interesting thing. Day five. So we've discovered flowers, trees, buffalo-type things, and then we've discovered some sort of intelligent life in the beaver.
And then even more intelligent life.
And then a more intelligent life that
Because
can
they
fly.
wave their arms at each other, so intelligent life that can fly.
yeah.
So they obviously have conversations and bone everywhere.
Day 5. What could we do next? How can we dial up the intrigue that is...
Economy. We discovered banks.
There's-
That's definitely a bank.
This one's got a credit card.
They've got a long line outside. They walk in looking kind of anticipatory, and they walk out looking either happy or tragically.
Jobs, factories.
Oh.
Yeah, they're lining up in factories.
Yeah, and they're so civilized.
Let's see if we can read their patent pending. All right. No, day 5, they need to dial it up more. And so instead of presenting, here's a new discovery.
What do you mean need? You're flagging something.
Oh, okay. That's
I think you're suggesting
I might be
they're
flagging
making shit up.
I'll just let you know that a lot of this theory doesn't stack up with modern
Oh, it's been debunked? Neil Armstrong didn't see many beavers
modern
on the moon.
understandings of the moon.
Right.
It just doesn't.
That was going to be my question at the
I'm
end.
not going to tell you where the flaw was.
No, don't. Leave it a
Just
mysterious.
yet.
I want to find out at the end. It's much more exciting.
So not factories.
Not factories, no banks.
Temples.
Temples.
Yeah.
And you can tell that because they are buildings.
Well, look, it's a building, but they didn't know on day 5. They didn't know. So Herschel presented readers with a mystery: the discovery of an apparently abandoned temple built of polished sapphire. The roof of the temple was constructed out of a yellow metal and fashioned to look like a mass of flames rising upwards and licking at a large sphere of clouded copper.
God damn, that sounds
as
fabulous.
If hieroglyphically consuming it.
Hieroglyphically consuming. I'm going to hieroglyphically consume a pizza tonight. I don't know what that means, but I feel like I want to.
The astronomers pondered what was meant by this globe surrounded by flames. Did the makers of the globe by this record any past calamity of their world or predict any future one of ours?
Whoa.
Their religion is telling us about climate change.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm in.
Anyway, he said, look, let's not indulge in speculative theories.
No, now's not the time to speculate.
However seductive to the imagination. But they solved it the next day.
Wow.
They solved it the next day.
Just in time for the next edition.
With, if you've gone from flowers to trees to bison to beaver people and then more intelligent bat people, what comes next?
Religion.
You want to know?
Oh, so politics, money,
war. No. This is the 1830s. Well, okay, it's any time.
So industry.
No, let's go. He goes racism. He goes, look what we found. We found white people.
I thought we were racist already because there's clearly 2 classes of sentient life forms, and that's a problem.
He's adding a third. So we have now discovered they do seem to live in proximity to the mysterious sapphire temple, a superior order of Vespertilio Homo. So these new creatures are of a larger stature than the former specimens, less dark in colour.
Wow.
And in every respect, an improved variety of their race.
Well, obviously, they look less like orangutans than even the other people do.
And clearly, they spend their time collecting fruit, flying, bathing, conversing, not fucking in public. What we might have discovered is white people on the moon.
Thank God. So finally, a species we could relate to as gentlemen of science and info. Well, that's wonderful.
But then shit happened. The astronomers left their telescope out. They went to bed after their discoveries at night time.
Well, and someone nicked it.
No, they left it pointing at the sun. And the sun concentrated the rays and burnt their observatory down.
Overnight.
Then the next day, because they're astronomers, they're up all night. They're sleeping during the day, so they're sleeping. Telescope is just sitting there, not covered.
Overnight, we left it facing the sun. The sun's out all the time, you idiots. We're astronomers.
They didn't put the lid on it.
Lens cap.
42,000 times. You think, and a microscope on the other end to make it brighter as well.
So they basically burnt the Cape of Good Hope down.
It's a nuclear bomb.
It is. It is.
So everything's gone. So
bummer.
The crowd went wild. All okay.
So sorry, just to recap. So they've done all this. They've, let's say, found all kinds of amazing things, and then they've destroyed the instrument of discovery. I mean,
sadly,
by accident, something happened.
Sadly,
because we were a little bit careless.
Maybe we were lucky. We were lucky to get the glimpse.
Got what we got.
The glimpse of the cosmos that we got. Don't expect.
That is wonderful. You're right. I slouch corrected.
As you suggested before. People went wild for this. You would have gone wild. I would have gone wild.
Ape shit. You imagine if we were reporting on the modern version of this now. Ape shit. Like I wouldn't have gone into work the next day. It's like, there's alien life. I don't care anymore.
I'll pull it up on the no. I'll agree with the modern version of this, and it's interesting to think what the modern version of this is.
It would be much more boring.
Would it? No, it wouldn't.
Yeah, it'd be much more.
It'd be funny.
No, it would start with we found bacteria, and everyone goes, "Well, that's cool."
No, I'm doing a more exciting modern version. I'll tell you why I think it.
I'm up for it.
Okay, so the Sun reckons that their paper more than doubled straight away overnight. So they were selling 8,000 copies a day.
Yeah.
By the end of the week, they were selling 19,000 copies.
Wow.
On the Friday article, the Sun stated, "We do not hesitate to say that our circulation is the greatest of any daily paper in the world. The daily edition of the London Times being only 17,000. Our only present difficulty is to strike off a sufficient number for the demand, making the Sun, as it is claimed, the largest selling newspaper in the world."
Utterly coincidental.
Utterly. Now, some people have pointed to the fact that actually a couple of months earlier, it sold 26,000 when it reported its rival's printing press burnt down for two reasons. One is one is everyone likes a fire, and also its rival burnt down, so no one could buy that newspaper that day.
Imagine that.
So
aside from being a lie and garbage, yeah, okay.
And also, probably other people have said that it probably was selling about 19,000 every day anyway.
So the biggest inauguration crowd in history.
Yeah, it a little bit of lying here. But that fact has been passed down. A lot of people still telling this story say that, it did a lot for their circulation. It seems like it actually didn't. Like it just...
So one of the beaver people, Kellyanne Conway, for example, passing it on, yes.
But everyone was talking about it.
Of course.
Like it does seem like, even though, they sold 19,000, that seems to be the limit of how much they could print in a day. Everyone else was getting in on it too.
Okay.
So almost every single newspaper in New York reprinted the text, like directly. They'll be like, "Wild story over in the Sun, they've found frickin' beaver people."
Yeah, let's take it. And whites. There are whites, so we can finally talk to them.
Finally white people.
Other superiors are around.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, later in the month, the Sun bound them all up into a special edition. Of
course they did.
A pamphlet, all five
Yours
editions.
for only $19.95.
But then it sold out straight away, 60,000 copies. Big collector's editions, because there's only like 5 of those left if you can ever find one.
Well, I'd like to see one.
I think it'd be nice.
Wouldn't buy it, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Maybe put on my white gloves, which I always carry, and touch it.
By the end of September, the news of discoveries had reached Europe.
Yeah.
And
September. So that was how much later-ish?
A boat ride later. So this was end of August. So the last episode was the white people episode was August 31st. So
okay, a month. Okay,
4 weeks later, and this is we're still in sailing times.
Not so much dial up as row up.
Yeah. So news of the discoveries reached Europe. William Griggs wrote about the whole thing only 17 years later, and so he's got a pretty good account of it in 1852.
And he was writing about the meta view.
So not the actual discovery. But okay. From England and France, these glorious and astounding discoveries sped their welcome way through Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, and Portugal, and were translated into all the languages. Another example of why success, supposedly missionaries wrote to Herschel asking how they could send Bibles to the people in the moon.
Oh, fuck me, they did. There's no question they did that.
Of course they did. Wouldn't you want to be St. Gary of the moon?
Oh,
St. Rod of...
Oh, it makes me so upset. And also reminiscent of South Park's episode on Marklar, where they had this whole thing, they found another planet, blah, 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 blah. But it was always a competition between normal human beings and this particular religious evangelicals who always needed more money for a warp 3.97 hydro laser to make ourselves go faster and get there first, to give them Bibles.
You know it.
It's so true.
You know it. You know it.
What do you think? New life form? Let's give them God. Yes.
Our God. Our God. Yeah. No, they've already got.
What do you mean our God?
They've all got already got the sapphire burning globe God.
Not our.
Yeah, there you go.
You act like there are others. You idiot.
Okay. Gotta let you down. It was fake.
What?
It was fake.
What?
No,
I'm leaving. This is me walking away.
Quickly developed the name, the Great Moon Hoax.
For what reason?
I don't know. Should we call it the the bat people fucking on the moon
Was
hoax.
pretty great.
Or
Pretty great hoax.
beaver people on the moon hoax. But
Just call it that. Beaver people. I'll read it.
so it is worth asking: Did people believe it at the time?
Surely so.
A lot of people read it. Like there's clearly evidence that a lot of people talked about it. A lot of people read it. But did they believe it? A lot of people at the time and now reckon they did. So Edgar Allan Poe, who plays a weird role in this actually, like Edgar Allan Poe.
There's no role Edgar Allan Poe played that wasn't weird.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, but yes.
He wrote in 1846, so what are we talking, 11 years later, he said that not one person in 10 discredited it. So he's saying like 90% of people believe it.
Okay.
And strangest of all, the doubters were chiefly those who doubted it without being able to say why. So they were just the ignorant, those uninformed in astronomy. So he's just talking about idiots or like uninformed, ignorant people. No, I don't believe it. As opposed to professors of astronomy, a grave professor of mathematics in a Virginian college told me seriously that he had not one doubt of truth in the whole affair.
But honestly, I mean, I don't know what was going on before, and obviously this episode doesn't cover all the history of the lunar astronomy, but what Herschel's reputation, if it was reasonable before...
It was good. It was solid. Herschel's
why the hell would you think this clown is going to make up some insane shit? And it also back to propaganda. Don't tell a small lie, tell a monster.
Oh, absolutely. And go hard on it. Go 6 days worth of front page covering.
What's that? Heptuple down. Sextuple down.
If you had buried this as a small paragraph in the sports pages.
We found an eye-flap bison. That's all.
No one.
Oh, not sure. Cheers, bye.
Yeah, absolutely. People care so much more because you're treating it like it's real.
So I suspect that actually a lot of people would. And we got to remember too, like, I mean, if I saw something of the equivalent today, would I believe it immediately? I can't say I wouldn't.
Let's find the thing that's equivalent. I think we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
William Griggs, he was writing 1852, so what was that, 17 years later. He recalled being present in New York when it was going down, and people would be standing outside the offices of the Sun as crowds gathered there, clamoring to purchase copies of the lunar discoveries.
For sure.
So he says everyone's believing it and everyone's loving it. The almost universal impression and expression of the multitude was that of confident wonder and insatiable credence.
Yeah.
People dived in as well. They joined in.
Yeah.
So people were like any hoax, conspiracy theory, people are adding their own bit. So
right.
So there's a story of a Quaker gentleman apparently telling the crowds gathered outside the offices of the Sun that while he'd been in London, he had personally witnessed Herschel's telescope being loaded onto a ship bound for South Africa.
Which means I know it's true.
Others said that they had copies of the Edinburgh Journal of Science that it came from, and it's all accurate, all true. A whole bunch of other newspapers joined in to say it was all seemed legit. The New Yorker seems like it said it was legit.
Okay.
The New York Times, which is actually not the New York Times, but a different New York Times from back then, I don't know, seemed to say it was legit.
The less failing one.
I don't know. Now, there were skeptics, of course.
Yes.
The most prominent one was the Sun's main rival, the New York Herald.
I'm amazed to hear that.
I know, right? I know. It was the one that burnt down, actually.
We might have burned down, but we're not idiots.
And the Journal of Commerce. We'll come back to them in a bit.
Yeah.
Now, it's worth thinking, how credulous were they? Because we can't quite tell from this, because it seems like there was a whole mythology of the event afterwards. Everyone loved telling the story of everyone falling for it.
Yeah.
So, the elites are worried that...
so it all got murky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The elites are worried that, they're really dumb masses, so maybe this was true of them. Yeah. Or...
Luckily we got rid of that attitude today.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like in Europe, said this was like this is an only in America thing. So whether they believed it or not, a lot of people were printing the story again. All they needed to say was as reported in the Sun or as reported originally in the Edinburgh Journal of Science.
Yep.
So it's kind of hard to tell.
Okay.
So,
but look, I think it would be. Again, we got to. It's very easy to be cynical and blah blah blah, and aren't we clever because we have more sources of info and channels for them. But if that's literally, if you imagine a world where you have 1, 2, maybe 3, if you're in a big town, newspapers at all, what else have you got as information.
No, you don't. You don't
That's
have
it.
any sources.
That's all you got.
And as I'll come to in a bit, you don't actually know. You
No, you
don't
don't.
actually know at all whether people on the moon. Yeah, sure.
So whether it utterly flies in the face of popular conversations or information about the moon, or if it's just like, we haven't heard much about the moon lately. Oh my God, someone got a better instrument and fuck me, look what they found.
Exactly. This is exactly how it would have been reported.
Absolutely.
If it had been true. Or
There's
someone
reason to believe. There really is.
Richard Adams Locke, born on September 22, 1800, in Somerset, England, from a pretty rich family. His grandfather, Richard Locke, had a sizable fortune through farming, buying poor land, and using scientific techniques to improve it. Okay. Locke himself would later claim that he's a direct descendant of the philosopher John Locke.
I was wondering.
It was kind of close. So he was like his uncle was...
Locke's servant and took his name. Yeah.
No. Like his great-great-grandfather was John Locke's uncle. So it's in there.
There's probably a way to describe that. I don't know what it is.
It's like my relationship to Napoleon. Like
pretty much
we share uncles.
Direct king.
We share uncles.
Direct
or
king.
something. I don't know. He was going to go to Oxford or Cambridge, but he became as a young age he became a Republican. Now I think, and not our modern idea of Republican,
No.
a more Australian idea of Republican, as in we don't like the king or the queen,
monarchy. Yeah.
which wasn't great, and his family disowned him. So
anyway, that's the end of him.
So no, he moved to America. He moved to America where being a Republican was not so much of a problem because they were Republicans.
They actually didn't want a king. Ironically, then they started to create a system that built one. Anyway.
Weird.
Yeah.
So he became a writer, and he's working in America as a writer. He arrived in New York City with his wife and daughter in 1832. Now, he told a lot of people that he had graduated from Cambridge, but he hadn't, even though a lot of that story still comes through. A lot of people still say he's a Cambridge graduate, but he never went there.
Yeah, fair enough.
However, because he had an extremely intellectual demeanor and was highly knowledgeable about a range of subjects, everyone in America accepted his claim about his education.
He had the ethos.
So Edgar Allan Poe met him and gave this great description. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
So he's about 5 feet 7 inches in height.
Monster.
Symmetrically formed. There is an air of distinction about his whole person, the air noble of genius. His face is strongly pitted by the smallpox, and perhaps from the same cause. There is a marked obliquity in the eyes.
Obliquity? Obliqueness?
Something?
When someone said to me, your eyes are quite oblique, I'd say either thanks or fuck you, and I wouldn't know which way to go.
I think you could go either way.
Yeah.
Just go for the tone. Like if they say, sounds like they're saying it nicely.
Your eyes are oblique. Oh, you bastard.
Yeah, your eyes are oblique.
I'm not interested in you that way. Yes,
So
you're right. I get it. Yeah.
A certain calm, clear luminousness, however, about these latter amply compensates for the defect, and the forehead is truly beautiful in its intellectuality. I am acquainted with no person possessing so fine a forehead as Mr. Locke.
He has very specific interests.
I, sir, love your forehead.
No, I've never seen a finer one on any human being. And I don't mean to sound weird, but my God, when you die, can I have it?
I aspire to that now. My wife teases me as having a growing forehead.
No, it's stopped.
Yeah, there you go.
You've arrested it. It looks great. It's great.
But I'd love to have a truly fine, truly beautiful intellectuality.
When you're dead, can I have it? Is that cool? Like for
just the forehead.
Just the forehead. I can use it as a little dish for mince on my desk. Not meat, like mints, not mince.
Fine. Fine.
Is that cool? Or an ashtray?
It's totally fine.
Ashtrays are coming back in.
I'm going to put it in my will.
Just to me.
Yeah, to Rod, my forehead.
Because I've got a very long lifespan.
Forehead or forehead?
Fred.
I like both. Both are legit. So he's got a great forehead. He got a job in New York City as metropolitan reporter for the Courier and Inquirer.
Ooh.
He did some other stuff. Then when he was covering the trial of Matthias the Prophet, which sounds awesome. Like I didn't even look into Matthias the Prophet because Matthias the Prophet murdered one of his followers and
only one.
Yeah, and was put on trial for this. And I'm sorry, listener. I'm sorry, Rod, but I don't know any more about that. But I thought we're a science podcast, but that sounds freaking awesome.
Oh, goddamn rabbit holes. There's so many.
But he wrote such a great article on this.
Yeah.
The Sun said, hey, why don't you come and do stuff for us? And if you can write some articles that maybe you can badge up into like a long series,
yes,
that might work well.
Yeah, we're happy. Yeah.
He came up with an astronomical satire detailing the discovery of life on the moon.
Lovely.
So
He didn't have to work hard.
no.
Just
Look,
say it. That's a satire.
so he didn't come clean immediately. A lot of the other papers were really cranky at him and started saying it was him.
Right.
But for a couple of years, he didn't come clean about it. But
Wait, which he, the satire writer or,
yeah, Locke.
or Herschel?
Like,
Okay, still Locke.
So Locke,
Okay.
Locke was the one that made it all up. John Herschel
Oh.
was a legitimate scientist, had nothing to do with this.
So Locke freaking defamed Herschel and did this whole thing.
Yeah, Herschel didn't mind, actually. Herschel was like, except for the annoying letters I get from missionaries and things like that, this is all pretty funny. Locke made the whole thing up. So,
Oh, that's fabulous.
so
And the most annoying letters are from missionaries. How can I get Bibles to the beaver people? Go fuck yourself. Hurry.
Beavers to the Beaver People. Now, that's a great name for a band.
That's our new band.
Beavers to the Beaver People. You can't say it. Bibles to
Bibles
the
to the beaver people. I said
so the first
beaver.
time he came clean was a little bit quietly. He was writing an article about poetry in another newspaper, and he added, like in his byline, author of the moon hoax.
Just threw it in there.
He just threw it in there. It's like, here's my article about poetry, author of the moon hoax.
That's like I'm adding to my bio from now on. Award winning.
But then 4 years later, another newspaper said, "Oi, if you're going to come clean, just do it in a big letter to us, and we'll pay you for that."
We'll give you a job and shit.
So he came clean in 1840, and he explained that he intended the whole thing to be a satire, not a hoax. And the object of his satire was the unchecked influence of religion on science. So he said that there was a bunch of people around who were sort of theological but doing science, and they were full of shit. So there was a guy named Thomas Dick, the Christian philosopher, who at the time had calculated the population of the solar system to be 21,894,974,404,480 inhabitants.
Based on the Bible?
I think so.
I used the Bible and worked out the population of the solar system. You're an idiot.
So he said the moon had 4.2 billion people on it at that time. I love the specificity. Like he's gone down to...
Yeah, of course. To like literally the individual.
Why don't you round it off at 21 trillion? Like that.
These shitheads. So Orson Welles was second. Wasn't it Orson Welles who did War of the Worlds on the radio? Was that Orson Welles?
I'll tell you a story about that.
So this is number 2.
I'll tell you a story about... So Orson Welles, that thing is not the story that you think it is. It's so awesome.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome. Carry on.
Awesome. Okay. So he came clean. It was John Adams Locke. He wrote this whole thing as a satire. He was pretending to show up these people that were doing this sort of religion science thing. But he did it because they thought this is going to sell, and it did sell, and it got a whole lot of people talking. But the interesting question, and this is the thing that I was wondering about reading about this.
Yeah.
Why did this go so viral? Because people had been doing weird satires about the moon for a while before. So Edgar Allan Poe, the previous year, had done the same sort of thing. He'd done this article about someone flew in a balloon up to the moon, and here's their story about it. Other people had said this whole thing.
Balloon to the moon?
A balloon to the moon.
That is not easy.
Other people have been doing this thing, but why did everyone talk about this and a whole lot of people believe it? Now,
right.
Back to something we'd said before. So there's a couple of reasons about why it went viral. I think the first one is we didn't actually know. So it could have been true.
Yeah.
Like there was legitimate discussion about whether the moon was inhabited at the time. There was a bunch of Germans at the time.
There's always Germans.
Franz von Paula Grutehusen, professor of astronomy at Munich University, he'd published a paper called Discovery of Many Distinct Traces of Lunar Inhabitants, especially one of their colossal buildings. He was the one that said that different colours indicate these sorts of things.
Right.
There were some other Germans, Carl Friedrich Gauss. Is he like Gauss? Is that Carl Friedrich Gauss? He was famous for something else.
Gaussian Gauss?
Sounds like it.
Well, there's Gaussian distributions, and there's also something to do with gas.
I kind of feel it might be. I don't know that. A
Seems
few other Germans, they all seriously discuss ways of communicating with the inhabitants of the moon. They wanted to build a series of giant geometric symbols on Earth that the people on the moon could read, and that would be...
Hello!
They published that in the Edinburgh New Philosophical Journal.
That's actually a very reasonable thing to try. But at the time in particular,
if you didn't know, you didn't know. Like
give it a go.
It was only a few years later that astronomers were able to develop techniques to work out if planets had atmospheres. And at that point, they said, look, the moon doesn't appear to have an atmosphere because there's no fuzziness
A
as
few
it
years later, that recently.
Yeah.
Spectroscopy? No.
Yeah, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
That's cool.
that was enough for them to argue, look, it's probably very unlikely that there's inhabitants if there's no atmosphere.
Yeah, that seems
So
reasonable.
it was up for debate.
Yeah.
So, people were really astronomically inclined at the time.
Yeah.
Halley's Comet was coming in 1835, so
cool.
people were a little bit worried. Obviously, going back to the way it was written written exactly as you would do. Yeah, it's written in the same sort of format, full of sciencey words. It's thou art the man, obviously.
Oh, God, that makes me happy.
But it's actually, when it comes down to it, a story of technology. The Sun had done two things that were brand new at the time that changed everything. So previously, all newspapers were printed on hand presses. You could crank them out and you could do like 100 or a couple of hundred
And you used to have
copies.
to crank the lead.
Yeah,
what is
yeah,
it?
you have
Turn the spindle.
Yeah,
and-
something like that.
Yeah.
So they bought a steam-powered printing press. And so they could do 20,000 copies in a day, which was way more than anyone else could.
Right.
So the year before, suddenly they'd been able to print out way more copies.
Mm-hmm.
The next innovation they'd had is they invented the newspaper boy. Like the kids standing on the
newsie.
street.
Extra.
It was the year before. Extra, read about the beavers on the moon. And
Let me read the abstract to you.
so they invented that at basically the same sort of time. So suddenly you've got heaps more newspapers, and you've got these little kids
Distribution systems.
reading out
Yeah,
these
yeah.
stories of beavers on the moon, white people on the moon, extra. And so suddenly it's a story. It's a story, nothing to
okay.
do with how it actually works. It's a story of new technology and people just going, "This is freaking fun."
So it's
I love all
Murdoch's
of this.
antecedents.
Absolutely. So
Right.
it came out. No one was really angry at all. No one.
Really?
Yeah. Everyone that was either duped
I suppose
or not.
technically no harm. I mean, in the end, like it doesn't. What do you do? I mean, maybe there are a few preppers back in the day who went, "Okay, they're going to invade, and we need to dig a hole."
Maybe.
But on the whole, what difference does it make to your day-to-day lives?
They weren't trying to spread fear or anything. It's
That's
not
it. Like it
they're
makes no
coming to get us.
difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Other than
it's-
going, "Ooh."
No, they didn't invade the capital or anything like that. So people, even the people that were duped, were a little while later, they're like, "Yeah, that was good fun.
was
I
fun.
enjoyed talking about that. That
Good
was
journey."
great." So
Yeah.
everyone afterwards seemed to say, "Yeah, that was cool.
Good on
Like
you."
that was ingenious,
Yeah.
awesome stuff, and great fun." So I think it's an awesome story because it's the first thing that went viral.
Is it?
I think so. Oh, okay. In a sort
What
of
about
modern
the
technology.
Bible, man?
Okay, look. In a sort of modern
yeah,
technology sort of format, it's a story, a
Yeah,
mass
yeah,
media
yeah.
event where suddenly everyone is talking about the same thing all at the same time. All the newspapers are getting in on it. They're all treating this as this is the story of this week. We all have to get involved.
Do you mean it's the first thing because it wasn't true? Because I mean, surely, like when wars started, for example, in Europe, everyone was talking about that war.
Okay, perhaps.
So maybe the first thing that was engineered to be done this way.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd qualify it.
All right. So let's put it on a spectrum of things that are important and everyone has to
Are you
know
going
it.
to hand me one of those beers, or do I have to, beg you and climb over it?
Everyone has to know it versus something that doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Here's a clear example of a story that doesn't really matter. It's not true, but it demonstrates a virality in a way that a news event is something like, okay, we all have to talk about this. So I think it does something really awesome in showing that it played the right cards and technology had changed. So suddenly, extra.
The timing was perfect.
Beavers on the moon.
Nothing existed, not even the telescope, surely.
Telescoping. No, the telescope was made up. Herschel was working in telescopes. Herschel was a legitimate astronomer.
Well, Herschel had shit named after him, like telescopes,
Yeah.
for example.
Totally. The Edinburgh Journal did exist, but collapsed a few months before. I don't know if
Before, okay. Well, that's probably a safer thing to leap onto then, because they wouldn't come back and go, "No, sir."
It's in terms of a thing, it was well made up. Like it was well crafted, but gutsy of a newspaper to spend 5 days of your front page running with the story that's not true. Like it's so go hard or go home.
But it's also such a wow. What a profound example of exactly what happens here all the time now, and by here I mean the world.
In what way? What do you mean?
Like just totally gutsy. Who gives a shit if it's true? With many media and sub media, we don't fucking care. We just want to sell ads.
And look, maybe it was that
impressive.
suddenly everyone was talking about it.
Yeah.
Like if it had happened in a smaller newspaper or 5 years earlier, it wouldn't have grabbed people. People would have just gone, okay, all right. But the fact that everyone was suddenly talking about, I mean, the fact that Edgar Allan Poe wrote a satire in another newspaper like 2 or 3 years before, but didn't have the circulation. And it just, it didn't grab.
So the true innovation was not the science, because there was no science in it, but the, thinking about how can we sell stuff.
It's the talking about it. There you go.
It's like comms matters.
Oh my God.
Did you know that was going to end that way? You didn't know.
Comms matters.
It was a coincidence.
Did you know we're brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science, where you can get all of your science communication needs.
And Moon Hoax needs.
Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant, him, Rod Lamberts. Thou art the man.
Oh.